Hello friends, welcome back to the class. I am Dr. Sonali Maurya, Assistant Professor, Department of English, Chhatrapati Shahuji Maharaj University, Kanpur. In our previous lecture, I have discussed about behavior and body language. In continuation to that, in today's lecture, I am going to discuss cultural differences in body language. Since it is fascinating to talk about body language, as we know that facial expressions, gestures, postures, they all convey different meaning in different setups. It is fascinating to know that facial expressions, gestures, postures and eye contact, eye movement, they all convey different meanings in different setup, depending on where we are in the world. So, let us dive into this captivating subject and explore that how body language varies across the culture. For example, we can see that we are walking down the street and we see someone giving you thumbs up, and in some countries it is a sign of approval and positivity, but in other countries it can have entirely a different meaning. So, let us begin with the class. Understanding body language in different cultures. Understanding body language in different cultures is very important. In order to avoid any kind of misunderstanding, it becomes very important to understand the culture as well for the speaker as well as for the receiver. Cultural difference in body language refer to the varied interpretations of non-verbal cues across different societies, because as I said that the facial expressions, gestures, postures, eyes and eye movements, they all convey different meanings in different culture. So, these differences are rooted majorly in cultural and social and environmental spheres, and these are the major factors. So, due to these factors, the same gesture, the same posture can signal approval in one culture and it can be offensive in the another culture. So, cultural differences in body language significantly impact the communication, and in order to make our communication effective, we should know that what are the cultural variations in terms of body language. Understanding body language in different culture is very important, and it is not only interesting, it also becomes essential for an effective cross-cultural communication. And by learning about these cultural differences, you can avoid misunderstandings, and you can also establish a very strong connections with people around the world. So, by familiarizing yourself with the cultural differences, you can enhance your intercultural communication process. So, now I will be discussing about the cultural differences in terms of eye contact. For example, eye contact and eye movement in America and Britain. If we talk about America and Britain, maintaining eye contact during the formal speeches is very much acceptable in both these countries. However, if we talk about and it denotes honesty and transparency in business dealings as well. But in many Asian countries like Indonesia, Japan, China, keeping one's eyes lowered is a sign of respect. So, as you have seen that here, the eye contact also varies from one culture to another. So, India, if we talk about India, this rule of not looking into the eyes is especially observed when dealing with seniors and women, and especially if we talk about staring in any part of the world is of course considered non-acceptable and very rude. However, Westerner might interpret lowered eyes as a sign of dishonesty as well as low confidence. And if we talk about the Western cultures, direct eye contact is seen as honest and attractive, whereas in many Asian, African and Middle Eastern cultures, it can be viewed as very, very aggressive and also disrespectful. For example, you can see Americans look directly in each other's eyes while talking during the conversation. For them, eye contact, to establish eye contact becomes very, very important. But most Western people think that if people are afraid to look others in the eyes, means they are hiding something or lying something. And in terms of China, long eye contact makes people weird and also strange, and people frequently avoid eye contact with others. So, as you have seen that eye contact in different countries, in different cultures, the meaning the eye contact or the eye movement convey, it varies. Now, if we talk about China, now if we talk about Japan, Africa, prolonged eye contact is considered very, very offensive as well as disrespectful. In Arabic cultures, prolonged eye contact shows interest, and it also helps them understand the other person as well. The people from Africa, Latin America, as well as the Caribbean, they avoid eye contact to show respect and also to maintain a kind of like, the bond. Now, if we talk about the facial expression in different setup, in different cultures, there are 6 several expressions: anger, disgust, fear, happiness, sadness and surprise. So, for example, smiling is one of the most common facial expressions, and Americans, they smile freely during the conversation and even when they are in conversation with the strangers. Now, if we talk about the Asians, Asians smile not only to express joy and friendliness, but also to convey pain as well as embarrassment. So, you have seen that how the facial expressions, they also vary from one culture to another. And now, if we talk about the Russians, they consider smiling as a strange and even impolite, and Mediterraneans such as Latin and Arabic cultures, they exaggerate grief or sadness, while most Americans hide their their grief or sorrow. Now, I will be talking about gestures in terms of cultural difference. Gestures, restrained cultures often feel that animated cultures lack manners and overall restraint, as well as animated cultures often feel that restrained culture lack emotion as well as interest. They are very, very indifferent. So, in the Middle East, nodding the head down indicates agreement, and nodding it up is a sign of disagreement as well. So, we can take the example of Japan. An up and down nod might just be a signal that someone isn't listening. Americans and Chinese nodding or moving the head moving the head up and down means yes, and shaking the head from one side to the other means no. However, in India, nodding the head means no, while shaking it means yes. So, you have seen that how these the head movement, how the head movement, facial expression, they also convey a different kind of meanings in different setups and different cultures. Nodding of the head in other cultures is a sign of acknowledgement as well as agreement, but in some other cases it only means I am listening, but I am not in agreement. And if we talk about the bowing is criticized and rejected in US, but in Japan it indicates respect as well as an acknowledgement of rank. And the thumbs up, it also signal is vulgar in Iran and Latin America. whereas OK signal refers to money, while in other it is an extremely offensive referring to a private body part. So, Americans use index finger and Germans their little finger, Japanese and Thai use their entire hand to point, right. And placing both hands. Now, if we talk about the hand movement, placing both hands at the side of the head with the forefinger pointing upward as a sign of anger. In other culture, it is an invitation to make love. So some countries consider a handshake rude. In Middle East, it is always rude to hand over an object to another person with your left hand, because it is reserved for matters of personal hygiene. While burping after a meal is considered the height of uncouthedness in US, a hearty belch is a sign of appreciation for the cook in India. Now, if we take the example of China, you have your arms from one side to other side to call a taxi on the street. In US, most people face a taxi at a drive-through makes a fist without the thumb, whereas in China, the hand movement means that people agree with others' idea, or it means good and I'm okay with that. Now, we can talk about saying yes or no in different culture. It is one of the most common responses in all communication, and yet surprisingly ways of saying yes or no also vary across culture. For example, people in Japan move their right hand to say no, whereas Americans and Canadians shake their heads back and forth. And people in Bulgaria, they nod up and down. So, for most North Indians, moving the head from left to right indicates denial, while moving the head up and down means yes. So, for some South Indians, both assent and dissent are conveyed by a sideways and no movement of the head. Now, if we talk about especially in terms of hand gestures, hand gesture also varies, or it also conveys different meaning in different setups, in different culture. And it becomes very important to understand in order to avoid misunderstanding and also to establish a very, very effective communication. A traditional and widely used form of greeting in the West, it is gaining popularity in India too, but it is done differently across the culture, across the world. For example, thumbs up, positive, it is considered positive in North America, considered rude or offensive in parts of the Middle East, Greece, as well as South America. And the sign of OK means good in the US, but can be an insult in France or Brazil, meaning it zero. So, beckoning, for example, we see the beckoning in China, calling someone with palm down, fingers moving is common, but this is rude in South Korea, often used for the animals. Handshake. So, while handshakes are very, very common in Western cultures, but in many Asian cultures such as Japan, prefer bowing, where the depth and duration of the bow indicate the level of respect that you can see here in this image displayed here. Now, the head movement also varies from one culture to another. While a nod typically means yes, in most of the world, for example, you can see the example of Bulgaria and Greece, it can signify no. And in India, a side to side head wobble or head wobble often indicates agreement. understanding, or more commonly active listening that you can see here in this image. Cultural differences in head movements. Bulgaria and Greece, that indicates no. And India, it is yes or listening, and in most countries it is considered yes. Cultural differences in terms of food placement, where you are placing your food. The foot movement and food placement also convey different meaning in different culture. So showing the soul of the foot in many Middle Eastern and Asian cultures, showing the soul of the foot is considered rude or insulting. For example, sitting with one leg crossed so that the sole faces others. This is an example of bad foot placement, which is really rude and very insulting in some countries. The next example, that pointing with a foot, pointing at a person or object with the foot, it's seen as highly disrespectful in many cultures. For example, using the foot to indicate direction instead of hand is again considered very insulting and rude. Now if we talk about the foot placement, in many Middle Eastern and Asian cultures, showing the sole of your shoes or pointing your foot at someone is considered highly disrespectful, and it is very true as well. We have also noticed it, and we also sometimes feel. Feet on furniture, placing feet on a table or desk is also is acceptable in some Western cultures, but is very offensive in Asian and Middle Eastern societies. And also if you see that here, being the Indian, you must have also noticed it. Stepping over someone, there are some other examples also. Stepping over someone in many Asian cultures, stepping over a seated or lying person is also considered very disrespectful. For example, walking over someone sitting on the floor. And you can take another example of, like, shoes inside home or religious places, or removing shoes is mandatory in many cultures such as India, Japan and Muslim societies. For example, shoes must be removed before entering the temples, mosques or homes. And also crossing legs while sitting, crossing leg in a way that shows the sole of the shoes may be seen as impolite in many culture, and like Thailand and also the Saudi Arabia. Now if we talk about the haptics, language of touch, and how it differs from one culture to another. Touch in body language or haptics is a very powerful and context dependent form of nonverbal communication, used to convey affection and to establish dominance, express sympathy and facilitate social interaction. And it also ranges from intentional gestures like holding hands to indicate intimacy, to professional brief touches on the arm and that signal trust or familiarity. But each culture has a clear concept of what parts of the body one may not touch. It may convey protection as well as support or disapproval, and this is very much visible here in this image that you can see. Continuing haptic, you can see that in Latin America, Southern European and Middle Eastern cultures are generally high contact, standing closer and touching more during conversation. So conversely, in the Far East and Nordic countries, people maintain greater physical distance during the communication. Now if we see that Asians, they do prefer touching than Americans during the conversation. And if we take the example of China, a lot of girls like holding each other's hand and putting on putting an arm on the other shoulder while walking on the street. And for some Americans and Europeans, this action seems to close, and some of them may think that the girls are homosexuals. And in some other cultures, patting a child's head is affectionate or friendly, except the Asian countries. So you have seen that how the touch is also very, very important, and how the meaning of touch also varies from one culture to another. Posture in different cultures. For example, resting the feet on the desk while sitting is common among Americans, but in Asia, Middle East and Europe, it is considered as highly offensive, very, very disrespectful and insulting. Another example of the rudeness is slouching is rude in most of the Northern Europe, and even in some Asian countries as well. And for example, like putting hands inside the pocket while standing is very, very disrespectful in Turkey. And sitting with leg crossed is offensive in Ghana. And if we talk about the Thailand, Cambodia, Laos and Saudi Arabia, showing the sole of the shoes or the feet while sitting in formal gatherings is very, very offensive and disrespectful for the person with whom you are in conversation. There are some more examples of commonly misinterpreted social cues, like Philipnos smile and laugh when actually they are angry. That we need to understand, because using the left hand to receive or give money or gifts is considered insulting in some Asian cultures, as the left hand is considered to be unclean. So such taboos exist in Western culture as well. You can take the example of a smiling, nodding face of the Japanese might be perceived as comprehension and acceptance of the message, while the gesture actually indicates that the person is still listening. But people get confused. It is just because of the lack of knowledge of their culture. So the popular sign of OK with the thumb and the forefinger together might be considered obscene in the parts of Italy, and rude and insulting in Russia and Germany, Brazil, etc. And the Japanese read this gesture as a sign for money and might interpret it as the requirement of a bribe at the end of the contract. So as you have seen that there are multiple interpretation or different interpretation of a single sign or single gesture, a single posture, a single facial expression or eye contact or touch in different setup, in different culture across the world. So that's why it is very, very important to understand the different culture in body language, because haptics, I mean the language of touch is very, very, this topic is very, very sensitive, especially the touch. Thank you.